All right, hello everybody. Welcome.
How you doing, Eric?
Okay, with the time being 1:31, I'll call the November 10th, 2021 STRGBA GSA meeting to order. Welcome again. Thanks for joining us on the phone. See, we have Miguel from the city of Modesto. And Chad's here from the Modesto Irrigation District. Eric Thorburn, I'm here from Oakdale Irrigation District. Mike Pitcock from the city of Waterford. Hi, Mike. Michael Renfro from city of Oakdale. I'm not seeing Walt yet. Or Michael Rydell. Did I miss anybody? Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Hopefully they'll be able to join us here in a little bit. So item 2 is business from the public. Interested persons are welcome at this time to introduce any topic within the agency's jurisdiction. Matters presented in this heading may be discussed, but no action will be taken by the agency at this meeting. So we'll open it up to the public. Okay, no hands raised, hearing nothing. We will move right on to item number 3. This is the meeting minutes. Assuming everybody's had a chance to look at the minutes, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Chad. Have a second?
Second, Waterford.
Thank you, Mike. Are there any comments from the member agencies on the minutes? Comments from the public? Okay, hearing none, seeing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Thank you. Moving on to item number 4, remote teleconferencing participation. I think you were going to lead this discussion. Gordon?
Right, and if y'all remember last month, we had SB 361 had a 30-day requirement that every 30 days we readopt the Brown Act provisions for remote teleconferencing participation in meetings that take place during the declared state of emergency. So staff is requesting that the GSA readopt the resolution that's included in today's handouts, and I was going to forego reading the whole resolution. Hopefully you've had a chance to read it.
Thank you, Gordon. Yeah, we're looking for a motion to approve.
Run for a motion.
Thank you, Renfro.
Second, City Modesto.
Thank you, Miguel. Any comments, questions from the member agencies? We'll be coming back here within 30 days to do this again, potentially. Okay, comments, questions from the public? Hearing none, seeing no hands raised. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, motion carries. Item number 5, budget and schedule update. And I think that's you again, Gordon.
Right.
Thank you.
So the updated budget and expense chart is included in today's handouts. And as of September 30, Todd Groundwater Consultant Team has expended 78% of the budget for a total cost to date of about $1.15 million. And they've also expended about 95% of the schedule. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Gordon. Comments, questions from member agencies on the budget and schedule? Comments, questions from the public then? Okay. Moving on to item number 6, GSP adoption schedule. I think you're going to help us out again with that, Gordon, right?
Right. So last time I'm going to talk. Okay, so anyway, appreciate everyone's getting back to me with their input on their adoption schedule for their individual agency. And today's handouts include a proposed noticing and public hearing schedule for the adoption of the draft groundwater sustainability plan, which is put together for each of the 7 STRGBA GSA member agencies. And most of the agencies will be posting at least one notice in the local newspaper ahead of their public hearing. So anyway, the handout shows the notice, the date that the notices are going to be posted, as well as the date of the actual hearing by your agency. That's all I had.
Okay, so we can see all the member agencies, public hearing dates and adoptions. That's in the packet here. OID actually had a presentation to our board on the 2nd, so last Tuesday, and we are planning to adopt on the 14th of December. We had not heard from the city and county, or the county rather, Tuolumne County GSA yet, right, Gordon, on their date?
I have not heard, but I'm not sure if Walt has been kind of handling that, but I haven't heard myself.
Okay, I didn't see anything back from Walt on it either, but I know they're aware. I just haven't heard that date. And I noticed they weren't on that list. So comments, questions from the member agencies first on the schedule for adoption? Okay, we'll open up to the public, and Alexis, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Eric. So my question is, it looked like the first notice was being published maybe on the 14th of November, which is Sunday. And so I'm just curious if the GSP, the entire draft is going to be available then, or what the expected date is.
Liz, you're on the phone, right?
Yes, I am. So the good news is that all of the chapters of the GSP are now done. There are 4 chapters out right now that are being reviewed by the TACs. And those are chapter 4, the notice and communication, chapter 6, sustainable management criteria, and chapters 8 and 9, which are the projects and management actions and the implementation plan. So as soon as we get comments back from the TACs, we will revise these sections, and then they will be posted to the STRGBA GSA website and be available for public review. And I don't know if all of them will be posted by this Sunday. I think it depends. I don't think, my guess is not, but maybe Gordon and Eric can help me out with that one. But I think that next week they should all be, probably by the end of next week, they should all be posted. It's my guess.
Yeah, so I think Gordon requested comments back on one of the last sections he mentioned by Friday, close of business. And so at that point, depending on the amount of comments from the TAC, then we could post immediately thereafter, you know. So yeah, I would hope by the beginning of next week, maybe you'd be able to get it posted. We don't have, so far in our review, we haven't had any significant comments. And Gordon, I didn't get a chance to look at your comments, but I know you submitted some today. What's your feel for that, Gordon?
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Eric, that I haven't seen really anything significant. So I was hoping also, if we can get everything back by Friday, that we could post it over the weekend. So that was our goal, and I think we can achieve it if everyone just get the comments back as soon as possible.
Yep. And then the resolution is written in a way that allows us to get direction from each of our boards to take action as a GSA in January, barring any unsubstantial changes. Barring any substantive changes, I should say. If that answers that question. Next on the line, Peter, have your hand raised.
Thank you. This is Peter Dreckmeyer. I'm the policy director for the Tuolumne River Trust. And I've been shopping around the idea of partnering with the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission on projects like groundwater recharge or other infrastructure improvements that would help use water more efficiently and reduce waste from canal spills, etc. I think it would be a great benefit to STRGBA to partner with the SFPUC because they have money and it's a lot cheaper to save water in Stanislaus County than it is in the Bay Area, where they would have to invest a lot in recycled water. What I've been proposing is that you collaborate with San Francisco. They put a lot of money into good projects and they get an insurance policy out of it where they'd be guaranteed if we had a more extreme drought than we've ever had before, that they would get water. And this is a great deal for groundwater agencies in Stanislaus County because the likelihood of them ever getting close to running out of water is incredibly small. They are planning for a design drought, which combines the 87 to 92 drought with the 76-77 drought. And they have a long-term vulnerability assessment that's coming out. And they found that the probability of 76-77 reoccurring is 1 in 100. And of 87 to 92 reoccurring is 1 in 420. So the odds of the design drought happening are 1 in 42,000. So I would love to talk more with folks about this. I have a little presentation I'd be happy to share. My email is peter@tuolumne.org. Fortunately, with this group, I don't need to spell out Tuolumne. And we likely will be commenting on the plan, especially the projects and management actions, which we hope will be very ambitious because there could be a lot more money available than you might think. And my understanding from what I just heard is that chapter might not be available yet, but if it is, maybe someone can share that with me. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, we'll look forward to those comments. We will be discussing at least a quick review of the projects, and then we'll be discussing the management actions here at the TAC meeting immediately following this meeting. So might have some, I would encourage you to listen on that meeting and then get back in touch with us too. Obviously provide your comments in the meeting, any additional comments you have in response to that, but we look forward to talking to you and just exploring that as an option.
Thank you, Eric.
Okay, Stacy.
Hi, thanks so much for the opportunity to ask a couple questions. So as I understand it, well, I guess I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly. Are you guys indicating that the public review period is going on right now and we're not going to put together a complete draft of the plan that's sent out on your website and sent to each of the member agencies? Or are they just all, we're all supposed to consider, and all the member agencies are just supposed to consider the chapters that are posted on the website right now?
Yeah, so we've been releasing them as they have become available, just in an effort to try and get it out there sooner rather than just all at one time, because it's there's a lot of pages and it's a pretty thick report. So we are not, I don't know that we're specifically planning on assembling everything as a complete package and then going through a formal public comment period as a whole at any given time. But the rest of the chapters are anticipated to be available hopefully next week. But comments have been, you're able to submit comments on what's out there right now. Whenever you're ready to submit those comments, you can submit them now if you haven't already.
And then, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay, so with respect to the comments, is there any deadline for submitting comments is the first question. And then the second is, are you going to be attaching the comments that are received as like an appendix to the plan, or somehow indicating whether the comments are being addressed in the plan that's ultimately put together for submittal to the state?
Yeah, so the thought was to have a minimum 30-day public comment period on at least after the last chapter was released. Liz, do you want to elaborate on the plan for responding to comments?
Yeah, the response to comments will be part of the GSP. So when we get the comment letters, we will respond formally, and those responses will be part of the GSP.
I think so far the public comments that we have received the letters we've actually posted, right, Gordon?
That's correct. We have them posted on our website.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That's all I have for now.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands raised from the public. So we'll move on to item number 7, which
Oh,
is just
Eric,
the
real
next.
quick.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
I'm sorry. I anticipated you coming back. I like a lot of times to hear from the public before I talk, and what Stacy brought up is sort of was our concern here at the City of Oakdale. That's why we moved our date to adoption to December 20th, because we want to post for public review for 30 days prior to adoption, right? So if we look at the county's December 7th date, the closure of the 30-day comment period isn't even finished for 2 of the chapters. That's if they were posted for public review today, November 10th. So every day that's delayed with you getting comments or the group, coming together with comments so that it could be published. And correct me if I'm wrong, if it's published today, that's great. But if it's moved, every day is another day that maybe another agency doesn't allow for the 30-day comment period. I see a bunch of dates of the 14th. So if we don't push this out for public comment by the 13th, that's a number of agencies, even besides the county, that doesn't allow for the full 30 days. Am I making sense? So if this goes to, like, say, the 19th, that's the last day for the City of Oakdale for documents to be pushed out for a 30-day public review, or we would have to move our date to the first meeting in January, which is, I think, the 6th, because we want a full 30-day comment period before we go to our council for adoption. Has anybody thought about that? If this, Liz, is the 10th, is it going out today? These 2 chapters I see in the GSP schedule that Gordon shared?
Yeah, no, there are 4 chapters that are currently being reviewed by the TACs, chapters
Yeah.
4, 6, 8, and 9. And we don't have comments back on those. And as
Right.
we get comments back, we'll turn them around. And I think Eric and Gordon were saying by the end of this week, and we realize how close it is. We are fully aware.
Yeah. So
And
let's,
I think Phyllis has spoken with Walt, and Walt realizes that the likelihood of having, he knows already that the 30-day public comment period is going to end after December 7th, which is his public hearing and adoption. And so he has informally told Phyllis that having a draft is okay. But we are very aware of these December 4th and dates after, the December 14th dates and the dates after. And we would like to have a complete draft done and the 30-day public comment period complete by those dates, so that we have a fully compiled GSP by then. And that's what we have already started working on. That we have started compiling a master document that has all of the chapters that have already gone public. And we're making some revisions to some of the chapters, along the way. We have noted in the document where there are holes or revisions to make. And so we've already begun trying to fill in those holes and making those revisions, so that, by mid-December, December 14th, we have a complete GSP.
okay, good. Thank you for that. Is there a running sort of GSP schedule that's available online? So that the chapters that are up for review, we provide the date it was posted and the date the 30-day comment period ends. Is that on our website?
But we haven't posted any comment period. We've left it open for comments. And there is my understanding is there is no formal requirement for a 30-day public comment period. But we're trying to provide that as a courtesy. And just to be fair, as far as the chapters, the TAC got 2 chapters within the last 5 days, something like that. So we're working hard to get it out there, but we don't want to put something out there before it's had at least one look over. And we have committed to getting those chapters back, or at least our initial comments back, by the end of the week. So they'll be out next week, and it's just a matter of how many comments. Like I said, I don't anticipate significant comments being made, but I would anticipate those being out next week, like we had discussed earlier. And again, just to reiterate, the resolution allows you the opportunity, assuming there's no significant changes that need to occur to the plan as a result of public comment, it
Yeah.
allows your agency, your council, our board, for example, to give staff the approval to take action to approve the plan as a GSA and vote on it as a GSA in January. So there will definitely be that additional amount of time between that date that you take action or the date that these chapters are released next week to collect those public comments, and then we still need time to address those comments too and respond to them and at least acknowledge them. So, but I think that's one of the reasons we're taking the time that we have, is because we're trying to flush out a lot of the comments ahead of time to prevent some major changes being needed at the end. So
Yeah, good. Thank you, Eric. And because the copy I would like to take, and I can't speak for the rest of the group, is the one with the public comments in it. And I know Walt is doing what he's done. He's got a lot. He and I talked offline about this, so I feel good about it. I just want to do the public, a service here by giving them a 30-day period and avoid any criticism if any of us just hold to these December dates, especially the 14th, because there's so many of us doing the 14th or 16th. And like I said, I'm doing the 20th. That would be interesting. And also, second part of my question is, in terms of the process, so we're getting approvals from our boards and councils to submit to DWR, but then there's a very, very long, I've heard a 2-year, have I heard that? A 2-year review period where we could get it finalized, right? So we're essentially saying, here's our draft final, but in 2 years, there'll be a final that get published, and there's no movement by the board, only if there's substantive change. And I think that's what I've heard you say, Eric. If there's anything that comes back by DWR that's totally, but we've been working with DWR all along, so there shouldn't be anything nuts, right, that should come back from them that would really change it from the, from the meaning that our boards and our councils adopted, the real intent, right?
yeah, no, that's a good point. The DWR has 2 years to respond to these plans, and that's another good point, that's why it's taken us a little longer on this plan, because they've started reviewing those plans. I think they have a couple of them out, and then they also provided a letter that clarified a few concerns that they had, and we wanted to be thorough in acknowledging those and kind of dotting the I's, crossing the T's before we put a plan together and submitted it to them. So,
Okay.
They will have 2 years to review it from there. So it's an iterative process. We got to start somewhere.
Right.
But I fully understand your concern.
Thank you. And one last part to the iterative process is there's another one in 5 years. So there's a 2-year review. 3 years after that, we do something, right? Maybe not all this over again, but we do something. We've talked about some of those things we do. We're doing more research, collecting more data, seeing what's wrong. And then we do a document and come back to our boards again for adoption again, all over again, right?
Yep.
So,
In 5 years.
yeah.
Yep.
Right. So I just want to be able to say that to those who've asked here after these meetings is, it's not that we adopt this thing and then staff is able to do for the next 20 years what we want. It'll continuously come back to our policymakers to see the changes and this iterative process and be part of it.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct. And we got our first annual report due right out of the gate here I think in April. So
Yeah.
we're going to have to just get right to work on that right after we adopt this plan. So, and from OID standpoint, I wanted to take action earlier. I've been informing the board as we've moved through this process. And so we generally know what we're going to be having, what's going to come into the draft from the bulk of the standpoint, bulk of the material in the draft sections we have already discussed at these meetings, and I have informed our board of that along the way. So I don't think that we're going to have anything that's a major surprise, at least to us, but I also wanted to get it out in front of the board sooner than later so that they had time, if they were hesitant to adopt it in December, we still had another meeting in January to do it. So it's just a matter of how you want to approach it. But
Same here. Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
And we do too. We can take another bite in January if we don't have any real good answers for them in December.
right.
But I thank you both, Liz, Eric, appreciate it.
Yep.
And if I could just add, I just wanted to reiterate something Eric said earlier. I didn't want to make it sound like the TACs are slowing us down. The TACs have been incredibly responsive to the drafts that we have sent out and provided comments very quickly. We have just finished some of these draft chapters within the last few days, which is why they're currently being reviewed. So anyway, Eric, I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
no problem, no problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else from the public? I'm not seeing any hands up. Okay, moving on to item number 8, items too late for the agenda. Are there any items too late for the agenda? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Renfro motion.
Thank you, Renfro.
I'll second.
Thanks, Chad. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. That ends the GSA meeting, and we will move right into the TAC meeting. 3 minutes ahead of schedule. Good. Okay, so with the time being 1:57 p.m., I'll call the November 10th, 2021 STRGBA GSA TAC meeting to order. Thanks for sticking around. Let's see, I think everybody that I called last meeting is still on the phone. Not seeing Walt still. Not seeing Rydell. So, yep, but we still have everybody. We still have Michael Renfro from City of Oakdale, Miguel Alvarez from City of Modesto, Mike Pitcock from City of Waterford, myself, Eric Thorburn from Oakdale Irrigation District, and Chad Tinkett from Modesto Irrigation District. With that, we will move on to item number 2. Again, business from the public at this time. Interested persons are welcome to introduce any topic within the agency's jurisdiction. Matters presented under this heading may be discussed, but no action will be taken by the agency at this meeting. So I will open it up to the public. Okay, hearing none, seeing no hands raised, we'll move right into item number 3. That is approval of the October 13th, 2021 special TAC meeting minutes. Assuming everybody has had a chance to review those minutes, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Chad. I have a second.
Second, Waterford.
Thank you, Mike. Any comments from the member agencies on the minutes? Comments, questions on the minutes from the public? Seeing no hands raised, hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, minutes have been approved. Thank you, everybody. Item number 4, management actions. And I believe we have Liz, but also Dominic, and they were going to present on those.
Yeah, I'll let Dominic take it away.
Let me get this up. Let me get a presentation up on the screen for everybody. Thank you, Eric and Liz. Let me see. That's weird. Is it? Can everybody see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Oops. Awesome. Excellent. So, as kind of was alluded to a few minutes ago, with regards to what chapters are out and available for review to the TAC, at the beginning of this week, we provided them and provided the member agencies to review the projects and management section of our GSP. For anybody who has not been regularly attending these meetings, the projects and management actions over the past several months, we've been working towards developing our, particularly looking on the projects side of sustainability, looking at what physical projects that we can bring into the subbasin. That was both a collection of potential projects, developing descriptions of them, and then utilizing our groundwater model to determine their beneficial impacts to the basin itself. So what the goal of today is I'm shooting to present basically the management action. So kind of the second half of this section of this chapter of the GSP. And although you'll really notice as we kind of go through this, there is some tie-in between the two. And so because of that, I have a couple introductory slides. We'll actually kind of do a refresh of some of the projects, and then we'll dive into really what are the management actions and how does that affect us as the basin as a whole. So if we want to kind of get right into things, the first thing is, well, really what is the definition of a project and management action, and how does this how is this going to be reflected in the GSP? Well, the first part of this is the projects. Those are what we've gone on. Those are the physical projects that that we are going to implement, or that we are at least planning or conceptually attempting to lay out as far as how is the basin going to achieve sustainability. Now, to supplement those projects, we also have a set of management actions, and I'll get into those in the latter half of this presentation. But really the goal of this entire section is to present to DWR the fact that this subbasin and the member agencies, and that collectively we have evaluated strategies to reach sustainability. So overall, what the really kind of the bulk of this is that DWR just wants to see that we are kind of jumping into things that we are trying to evaluate to the best of our ability. What are some of the projects and those management actions that we can implement to meet our SGMA regulatory requirements? So the goal of this really was a collection of information from the various agencies as far as what projects we are intending to implement, how we are intending on permitting them, what their schedule is, what the funds are, effectively, are there multiple agencies working together, kind of really just kind of throw out all the details as far as what can we come up with to achieve sustainability. And so the overall goal of this is to take that information, evaluate it, and finally estimate really what are our benefits, and really describe that to the state as a whole. So without kind of getting into the very specifics of these, really what I want to show is that the projects and management actions section for each one, a project or a management action, we are going to basically present all of this information to DWR in order to meet our SGMA regulation requirements. And so because of that, what we can see is, for an example, is we go through for each and every action, we go through a generalized description. We go through some of the a set of permitting, talking about benefits, a quantification of those benefits, and then we talk a lot about both the implementation, where we're getting the water to be able to implement some of these projects, looking at the legal authority, and then finally getting to really and laying out what is our estimated costs, how do we plan on implement these, and how does that affect our overall management. And each of these items are required in SGMA, they are required to be included in the GSP. And so we have been kind of answering each of these questions to the best of our ability as far as kind of taking that step towards really fleshing out these projects and really kind of thinking about them and anticipating what we can do to meet these goals. So kind of as a really quick summary of all the projects and all the management actions that we're taking a look at, effectively, we've kind of broken down a lot of these projects into three categories. We have two group one projects, which is the expansion of surface water treatment to the city of Modesto, and the advanced metering and infrastructure project also through the city of Modesto. These are projects that are ongoing. These are group one. We've talked about these and kind of from a modeling perspective in some of the past presentations. But if we want to look at really today, looking at really, well, how are we taking that information and putting it into the GSP specifically, those two projects are considered group one projects and are incorporated. In addition to that, we also have a couple more urban and municipal projects. We have the storm drain cross connection removal project. So that's going to be supplementing additional recharge into the basin in the city of Modesto, as well as bringing surface water supply to the city of Waterford as well. So these are all of our municipal projects, and you can see kind of over here on the right-hand side, this is really what we are, this is what we directly simulated in the model. And so because of the degree of certainty that we have in evaluating these projects, we wanted to make sure we quantify them, quantify their impacts. And that's actually in our previous presentation. If anyone's curious and did not see it, those are available if you would like to hear me kind of go through the details of the quantifications of these projects. But in addition to that, from an agricultural perspective, we actually have these two categories. We have in lieu supply and recharge projects. This is bringing irrigation water during the irrigation season. So bringing additional surface water to some of the areas that do not traditionally get water from MID or OID. This is going to be expanding some of that surface water supply to out of district lands. Effectively, each of the districts selling water to people who are not part of the districts themselves. In addition to the in lieu recharge projects, we also have a few flood mitigation projects. Now, a flood mitigation project, at least as these two are planning to be operated, is going to be, this is the wintertime recharge. So the goal of this would be to divert additional water off of particularly off the Tuolumne River for this first one, and to be able to either put that in recharge basins or direct application to agricultural areas to induce additional groundwater recharge. And similarly with Dry Creek, just a slightly lesser degree of magnitude of the project, but still the goal of these two are going to be wintertime recharge to kind of recharge the basin from our summer activities or from irrigation period, from activities during the irrigation period. So effectively what we have is these projects 1 through 8. We've gone through in details. We've really kind of taken being kind of with these group 1 or group 2 projects, we have a lot of information about these. We've described all these projects into a high degree of detail. And we've also used the groundwater model that we have to be able to quantify their impacts. And so there's a lot of information on each one of these items described quite in detail in the GSP. Now, the last category they have is what we're considering as group 3 projects. Now, group 3 projects are conceptually, we've described them as potential future projects. And really what this means is that they're really much more in an idea phase, kind of in a conceptual nature. We know that these are projects that could, in theory, help the basin reach its sustainability goals if it is necessary. So given that we have this list of these 5 projects that we're going to keep in our back pocket, depending on how the rest of these projects, how they affect the basin in the real world application, how we're doing as we move into the future. We know we can kind of keep these in the back pocket so that we know that if we do need to implement additional projects, bring additional water supplies to the basin, we've kind of already beginning to think through that. Now, for the sake of DWR and the GSP, there is really a differentiation between these different categories. The projects 1 through 8 here are in a very high, provide a very high level of detail, and but we also include some of these last 5 here as kind of a little bit set aside, and we acknowledge DWR is happy for us to acknowledge the the degree of uncertainty, but they do want to say that we have been thinking about what other options we have available. Okay, so with that little bit of refresher on the project side of things, the next item to look at is really what are our management actions. Now, before we get into some of the details and I describe some of the management actions that we're putting into the GSP, I wanted to add a couple of these notes because these are kind of very common questions that we get. And the first one is really, in my opinion, the most important, is that the management actions will only be implemented on an as needed basis. So effectively, based on the evaluation and the analysis that we've done over the past few months with our projects, it is the absolute goal of this basin to be able to achieve sustainability looking at supply side solutions. We've compiled information, we've run them through the groundwater model over a 50-year planning horizon. And at least as of right now, it looks as if we will not necessarily need to incorporate many of these management actions. But again, it's kind of one of those ideas that DWR really likes to see, that we have an answer if the solution, if they become necessary. So going to add the caveat, they are not necessarily we do not be required to be implemented just because we describe them in the GSP, but it is good for the state to be able to know that we're thinking about them and we acknowledge that this may be the case depending on how implementation proceeds. If anybody remembers, as we kind of talked about some of the assumptions and as we're looking at the modeling at our last presentation, there is still a lot of uncertainty into how fast we can both permit and provide the infrastructure to implement some of the projects that we have. And so based on the uncertainty surrounding those projects, particularly related to their timeline, then it's good for us to be able to have these management actions, again, sitting in our back pocket, ready to be implemented if the need arises. And then the other item that I often hit, and you're definitely going to see here as we get in the next coming slides, is that the management actions, what we have right now, and as we will be presenting in the GSP, the idea is that they are a framework. They are not described in detail or in as high of detail as some of our projects are, and that there is a good degree of flexibility depending on what need we are trying to achieve with these management actions. And so I want to make sure that everybody is aware that the GSA that these are built in with a degree of flexibility so that the GSA can determine the best way to implement them down the road if they are needed to be implemented. So if we want to take a look at the two really main types of management actions, we've kind of broken up a lot of our potential management actions in the GSP into these two predominant categories. The first being what we're considering a demand management strategies. Now, the goal of a demand management strategy is really looking at the other side of the coin as far as bringing projects, right? All of our projects right now are built around bringing additional surface water and being able to capture additional surface water for use in the basin. And so really those are what I consider the supply side. We have supply side projects. Now on the demand side of things, really the goal of this is to work with local agencies and with the local landowners in order to be able to evaluate what are the conditions, and then if necessary, the goal would be to come up with an action and be able to kind of theorize how we can move forward with any kind of demand management, again, as needed. And in addition to that, we also have a second category, which we're calling a water accounting framework. Now, really, this is the goal of a water accounting framework is to really support both all the other projects and a potential need for a demand management. The goal for this is really what are kind of the supplemental bits of information that we are going to need? How could we potentially implement these? And so effectively, by incorporating this, we give the GSA a little bit of flexibility in regarding both how things are being implemented, but it describes to DWR that we are at least thinking about how we will go about achieving sustainability and how we will implement all of our projects and management actions if the need arises. Okay, so if we want to get into a little bit bigger detail, if you can see here that in kind of the first category, again, we've broken up all of the management actions into two main groups. Of the 6 management actions, we have management actions 1 and 2 are related to conservation and or potential land fallowing in the basin. And we have as group 2 is conservation practices. And then as we dive into the water accounting framework, you can see again, as I described in the previous slide, that a lot of this is really based on developing programs to compile information, to implement to develop the rules and the kind of outline a little bit of the framework that if these management actions need to be implemented, we have the capability and we've thought through the process in which we will be able to do so. So if we want to look at the kind of the specific details of these management actions, the first management action we have is this idea of voluntary conservation and land fallowing. So the goal of this is to be able to provide to DWR that we've thought through the idea of implementing multiple strategies to either temporarily or permanently reduce our overall demand in the basin. The idea behind this being that, again, if the supply side projects are either not implemented or implemented in a longer timeline than what is necessary to meet our SGMA goals and meet our minimum thresholds as outlined in previous chapters of the GSP, the idea behind this is that this management action would allow us to kind of take at least a step forward particularly to temporarily bolster, or at least my hope would be to either not have to implement it at all, or at least to at worst temporarily implement it. The goal would be to implement this to provide voluntary conservation to be able to meet the sustainability goals on those localized thresholds. In addition to that, we also have what we're considering conservation practices. Now, this is very similar to the previous management action, but it effectively is a little bit more targeted towards the urban sector. And the goal of this is to utilize a lot of the information that is already in our urban water management plans and our agricultural water management plans. Most of the major municipalities and both districts, Oakdale and Modesto Irrigation District, they already regularly provide these management plans, and in which case in those plans, they actually outline several opportunities for conservation. And based on that, we are effectively, from our GSP, we're kind of pointing at those previously documents and saying, hey, we've looked at all these other ideas to potentially reduce our overall demand from the groundwater system. And since we already have that information, we are effectively going to set ourselves up with a good framework of how to implement those previously thought through practices. So then when it comes to the water accounting framework, this is our effectively our next 4 major programs that we have here. And again, the goal of this is really to build the GSA's capability of implementing both projects and the other management actions here. So the first one is to look at a groundwater extraction and reporting program. Now, the GSP itself and all future annual reports, the 5 years updates, et cetera, all require us to be able to quantify the volumes of water that we are pumping out of the aquifer system. The goal of this is to be able to say, if necessary, we could pursue multiple options when it comes to estimating that volumetric groundwater extraction. For example, at the moment, the GSP, a lot of the estimates related to how much groundwater pumping is done in the basin is developed by the groundwater model that we've been working on over the past few years. There are other forms of data that are very similar to utilizing the model that can provide us with this information, whether that is utilizing remote sensing imagery, so satellite imagery that can estimate both the consumptive use of groundwater and or direct groundwater metering. Gosh, that word's hard today. But the goal of this is to really just kind of outline the fact that we know that there are multiple options into evaluating and quantifying groundwater extraction across the basin. We definitely we're going to be doing our best to keep this at a high level, and if we're meeting our sustainability goals, that may be sufficient. But the idea is that we need to be able to put it into the GSP that we've at least thought about, we've considered, and that, you know, if the need arises, that we can go to effectively those higher levels of detail, although that acknowledging that they do have a cost associated with them. It's good for us to present to DWR that we're at least thinking about it. So then when it comes to what we have here as management action 4, the idea is that we would also be considering what is a groundwater allocation or pumping management program. And really the goal of this is a little bit kind of would work in conjunction with potentially with some of the with the first two management actions, looking at conservation, looking at a potential land fouling. The idea behind this is that in order to facilitate those potential management actions, we would need a program to be able to quantify that and be able to really keep track of the records and things to that effect. And so it's really more of a conceptual nature of trying to being able to understand and laying that program out in detail for DWR, again, to let them know that we're thinking about this, even though ideally we would not have to implement it. Similarly to the groundwater allocation program, we also have acknowledged that there is a could potentially utilize groundwater extraction fees, kind of effectively operating through the GSA. And we could develop a potential fee structure for overall groundwater users to work both in conjunction with this groundwater allocation program, with any kind of the reporting programs that we have as far as annual reports, and that we can acknowledge that implementation of all these projects does cost money, and that if necessary, we've outlined really how we would go about doing that. And then the last item I have for the water accounting framework here, as far as our generalized management action, is potentially to incorporate or to develop a groundwater pumping credit or trading program. And again, this really feeds back because all these are very interconnected. This feeds back to management action 4, management action 5 here. The goal of this would be to really help the basin optimize the overall use of groundwater production if these previous management actions need to take place. So again, all of these, particularly in the water accounting side of the equation, it's really about supporting the other projects and management actions, but we do want to make sure we outline them to the Department of Water Resources so that they are very aware that we've at least very well thought through these, even if the long-term goal is to not have to implement them. I just saw a couple of questions pop up. This is my last slide, so hopefully I'll get to your questions in 1 second if I can. So as far the last item that we really hear that we have is kind of from a regulatory requirement that is necessary to put into our GSP is to really discuss overall plan implementation. Now the goal of this is really to describe in our GSP to describe really how are we going to go about looking at each of these programs, both the projects, the management actions. How does this all tie back together? Minimum thresholds. The goal is how are we tying our GSP together, and how are we going to take those first steps? Because we do know that there is a process in achieving sustainability. Unfortunately, we can't just snap our fingers and have it be good to go as of tomorrow. So this is really talking about looking at not only the timeline, but it's really talking about really if there are any triggers to any of the projects or management actions, and talks about a little bit of how we are going to be addressing whether or not we need to implement these projects or these management actions at a combination of our annual reports that we spoke to a little bit earlier, and as far as the 5-year GSP updates. So again, the goal of this is just it walks through each of the steps related to overall administration and management of the basin, and how the GSA will be able to implement its governance activities and implement the rest of these the projects or management actions as necessary. So effectively, if there are any triggers, and what we will be doing overall to achieve our goals of sustainability. So that's all I have as far as direct. Oh, it looks like my questions are answered. So for anybody just who's doesn't have your text box open, Peter asked if the presentation will be made available. I believe that answer is yes. I'm not sure if it is. I would imagine it's currently up on the website, although maybe Eric or Gordon can speak specifically to that.
Yeah, I know it was in the agenda, so you might be able to scroll down and get it. And I think that's probably what I think it was maybe Peter that asked that. I think he probably noticed that, but and the agenda is available online as well on the website. So the other question was, or just request was that we put page numbers on the slides. And I actually remember that question last time, so we'll have to do a better job of doing that. So thank you for that suggestion, that input. So with that, we'll take questions, comments from the member agencies first before we open it up to the public. Okay, we'll open it up to the public here, and Stacy, you have your hand up.
I think you pretty much answered my question, but I just want to be sure the chapters that we do not yet have available are going to discuss the time frame for when the management actions would be implemented if the projects are either not implemented or not successful. Is that right?
Yes. So chapters 8 and 9, which are not available yet, they're going through the TAC review right now. So we're hopefully getting those to you as soon as possible. But there is chapters 8 and 9 are kind of effectively what I have described in this presentation, and that should have a very detailed description of these, specifically going through things like, as you mentioned, schedule, cost, implementation, what triggers them, things to that effect.
And just so I can try to get an answer sooner than later, can you give me any indication of what sort of time frame there is for determining whether the projects are even starting to be implemented? Which would then, if they're not, would trigger the management actions? Is it like a year? Is it 2 years?
So what I guess I'll try to help answer that. Every year we're going to have annual reports. And so if in our annual reports in 3 years we're ahead of schedule, then you might have a little more time. If we're behind our projections and groundwater levels are much lower than we had anticipated, then they're going to have less time. But certainly in between now and the 5-year report, we're going to continue to assess things, and we'll have an update as to the progress on that or lack of progress and how management actions are coming along. And honestly, in between, it likely, because from my perspective anyway, OID's perspective, we need to get these projects going right away. Because you got the design, you got the construction, you got the environmental before that happens, you got permitting that goes along with it. So they need to happen quickly. And so we might even start developing some of the framework for management actions to be able to implement them more quickly if and when we find we need to, because the projects aren't moving along quickly enough. Does that help answer your question, Stacy?
Yeah, it does. And I just want to make sure, I think you guys have answered this before, but I want to make sure it's clear that while we're waiting to see if these projects are actually developed and implemented, the only way that we are able to monitor whether the overdraft conditions on the east side are getting worse is through those monitoring wells that we have over there. Is that right?
That's correct. And the other monitoring wells, honestly, in OID, we're seeing the effect of the east side pumping within our wells. So we'll have that indication there too. But certainly those wells on the east side, those new monitoring wells will be very helpful in monitoring that moving forward.
And then with respect to monitoring what's going on over there, you know, we're in a drought this year, obviously, and if we're in a drought next year, is there anything that the GSP is going to do to impose restrictions on pumping on the east side so that the problem doesn't get exacerbated?
No, we have no program in place to do that. And that's not one of our management actions currently, but it can be something that and it could be included in that list that Dominic put together. But as he said, all that stuff needs to be developed. If that's the way we end up going, we need to develop the program before we implement it. And currently we have no way of implementing it without having that program thoroughly vetted and in place.
And so over the next year, then after we submit our program, are you going to continue to be meeting on a monthly basis, or how often are we going to be meeting so we can talk about these issues?
We typically meet monthly, and so I would venture to guess that we're going to continue to meet monthly, but we've been meeting more often now just because we have a plan that's required to be drafted and put together by that deadline. So I would anticipate no less than monthly, at least initially, because we got to get the annual report done, and we've got a lot of work to continue to do. So my guess would be monthly, and as needed additionally beyond that.
And then at this point, do any of the chapters contemplate any sort of assessments being imposed on anyone?
I'm sorry, any sort of what being imposed?
Assessments or fees being imposed on anyone within the GSP?
No, that's one of the proposed management actions that Dominic had on his list. Again, one of the things that we could consider doing. And we would have to develop and talk about, discuss.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Eric, if I can, this is Liz from Town Groundwater. I would like to add, and it's something that we've discussed in previous meetings, we have established interim milestones for the wells that are within OID and the non-district east management areas. And these interim milestones recognize that, you know, groundwater levels may continue to drop and below the minimum threshold in the next couple of years. And it recognizes that ahead of time and sort of gives the GSAs kind of some leeway. I mean, it kind of tells DWR that, hey, we know that it's going to take us some time to get projects going, and it's going to take some time for these water levels to recover, but it's not going to happen immediately. And so we've developed these interim milestones with that understanding. So that is those are described in Chapter 7, the Monitoring Network chapter, which is available on the website right now.
Yeah, that's a good point, Liz. Thank you. And I'll point out that the interim milestone in year 5 is where we essentially start to see things needing to make the turn towards a rebound in groundwater levels. So you can imagine that if you have a project in place today, you're not going to see a rebound and recovery immediately. And as you have at the same time as you have droughts like this, you are likely going to have a lot more drawdown than maybe we anticipated initially. So like I said, we're going to have to ramp up and ramp down, or ramp down depending on what occurs, but that's our projection. So yeah, thank you very much for that, Liz. Peter, you have your hand up.
Thank you. Peter Dreckmeyer, Policy Director for Tuolumne River Trust. Eric, you ran a very good meeting. Congratulations. And Dominic, really appreciated your presentation. A lot of good thinking is going into this GSP, and I appreciate all of you for putting your time into this. At the previous meeting, I mentioned collaboration with the SFPUC, and I'm not going to repeat what I said, which was essentially that they're planning for a very conservative, what they call design drought, 8.5 years. What I didn't mention is that they're also planning for demand to be 25% higher than it is today. They're planning for demand to be 265 million gallons per day, which is actually contractual obligations, but there are no demand projections that suggest it would ever get that high. And what we've seen is In 1987, just before that long 6-year drought, demand was 293 million gallons per day. This year it was 200. So it's been going down over the years. It's actually been under 200 for the last 6 years. And one of the reasons is the price of water has skyrocketed to pay for all the seismic upgrades to the Hetch Hetchy system. So we pay $2,000 an acre foot versus about 20 in Stanislaus County for agriculture. And it's projected to go up to 3,000 an acre foot in the next 10 years. So the finance division at the SFPUC, they're projecting that water sales are going to remain flat. And we have modeled what would happen if the drought of record 87 to 92 repeated under current demand, and the SFPUC could make it through that drought without any rationing, without bringing any new water online. With 20% rationing starting year 3, they can make it through 7 years of their design drought. And by adding 28,000 acre feet to their supply, or 25 MGD, they can make it through the full 8.5-year drought, which is incredibly unlikely. So the thing is that they're so paranoid about running out of water and not being able to provide water to Silicon Valley and San Francisco, that they would be willing to buy a really expensive insurance policy from MIDTID or one of the groundwater sustainability agencies, which could help out with a lot of these projects you've been talking about, including potential future projects that aren't necessarily going to happen. And the chances of them ever collecting on this insurance policy are so minuscule. So it's almost like free water. Now, I've talked to the SFPUC about this all the time. They're very interested, but they don't think the folks in Stanislaus County are interested. And I tell them, the things are changing. There's a lot of good, reasonable people there who understand win-win scenarios. We've got Sigma, we've got, Bay Delta Water Quality Control Plan. There's a lot of changes happening. And they've actually told me, it's like, well, hey, anything you can do to open doors, please go for it. So I'm here as a matchmaker. I want to get people talking about this. I think it really is a potential win for folks in San Joaquin County, for those in the Bay Area, and for the Tuolumne River, which obviously is our mission, is to protect and restore the river. So thank you for all your good work on this, and thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Very interesting. Great comments. Thank you very much, Peter. Okay, any other public comment on the presentation?
Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you very much, Dominic. I'll open it up again to the member agencies. It sounded like last time they wanted to talk afterwards. Got another shot here. Okay, great job, Dominic. Thank you. Moving on to item number 5, it's just the next meeting. So we're planning on having our next meeting on December 8th at 2 p.m. It would follow, the TAC meeting would follow the GSA monthly meeting, and that would be on Zoom again. So questions from the member agencies, comments on that? Questions, comments from the public on the next meeting? Okay, item number 6 is just any items that are too late for the agenda, and if we don't have any, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move, Waterford.
Thank you, Mike.
Renfro, second.
Thank you, Renfro. All those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much for your participation, everybody. Really appreciate it. Have a good one.